So today we're looking at the features and accessories of the Rifton activity chair. We'll discuss the therapeutic and functional use of these, specifically for the functional sitting position, as we go along. So what we see here is two of our activity chairs. This one is medium and this one is large. The large can serve up to a 250-pound individual, and this can serve up to 175 pounds. We do have a small size for up to 75 pounds. The difference that you see here is that this one is on a high-low base, and this one is on a standard base. So we have small, medium, large in standard, and we have small, medium, large in the high-low. The push handles are appropriate when you plan to move the chair around the classroom or school. They are height adjustable for ergonomics and removable. Think about taking them completely off for that yearbook or class photo, maybe with the headrest off just for that moment as well. We also offer different color options of the pads. You can check out our website for those. Now for the standard chair, the casters are a little smaller for going over those door thresholds. You can get height adjustment, which is done with a push button on the actual leg. So you would need to do the height adjustment when the child is not in the chair. You do also have the option for non-mobile, but do be aware that it's quite a hefty chair, so that would be a case where you don't anticipate moving the chair around that much. There is a direction lock, just as with the high-low. The idea here is kind of like a shopping cart, that guidance for steering for longer distances, and then of course you can set the brakes whenever you need to as well. Now there are two leg size options for the standard. For the same size of chair, the lowest position on the standard is going to be the same as the lowest position on the high-low. So if you're thinking about that seat height from the floor, the range that is available with the high-low chair is the same as the lowest position on the shortest leg of the standard chair up to the highest position of the longest leg on the standard chair. Now on the high-low, you can get that whole range with the child in the chair simply by using this foot pedal. The medium and large have a foot pedal for that up and down height adjust. The small chair has a handheld height adjust. You will notice that as you are lowering the child, you do that by lifting this pedal here with your foot, and at a certain point it is going to stop. That is a safety. We don't want it landing on anyone's foot. The way that you are going to get that last bit of distance is by lifting this red latch here so that it clears the bar and lets you go the whole way down. In terms of participation, this is ideal for circle time with your class, playing with peers on the floor, access to the pets at home, that type of thing. Whereas the high position is going to be ideal for getting up to a cafeteria table or up to a sink to wash hands, a computer table. So definitely that option for accessing the educational environment in an activity chair versus in a wheelchair is certainly an advantage. Another benefit that we see is tilt in space. This is a simple one-handed adjustment here. It's available on the high-low and on the standard. The anterior tilt in space is 15 degrees on both chairs. Anterior tilt can promote back extension in sitting. On the high-low, the posterior tilt goes all the way to 25 degrees. With a standard base, it only goes to 15 degrees. So this would be 15 degrees forward and 15 degrees back. Here is the index that shows those angles. We know that 20 degrees of posterior tilt in space is needed for effective pressure relief, so that is another consideration. Certainly the standard chair is a lot more economical, but those are some of the limitations. The backrest angle has the index here. And for both chairs, the backrest adjusts from 5 degrees forward to 20 degrees back. The adjustment for the backrest is here. This little white lever. All the adjustment points on the chair are white. Recline will open up the angle at the hips. That is considered beneficial for the hip joint. This is an independent adjustment from the tilt in space, which is important because the recline with the seat horizontal can increase some reflex extensor tone for some children. This way you can combine the recline with tilt in space or use just tilt in space. We do also have the option for spring adjust. The spring adjustment is great for those kids who need that dynamic movement in the backrest. They may have extensor tone or habitually like to get that movement. Research has shown that enabling that backrest movement helps keep the child's pelvis seated at the back of the chair. They won't be moving forward into a more sacral sitting position over time. As well, it will also sustain the durability of the product. You can upgrade to that dynamic spring by ordering just this component for your existing chair. Then in addition, with a standard base, we have that option for that spring adjust, not only in the backrest, but also in the seat. This is helpful for a child with cerebral palsy that needs that rocking, that proprioception to help with centering them. Or your child with autism, this is a very nice chair. The standard chair you can get even without the wheels so that it doesn't move anywhere on the floor. It just has its stationary spot and the child is obtaining the movement that they require in that one stationary place. They're not needing to run around the room, for example. In fact, any child with vestibular or tactile hyposensitivity who has that movement-seeking or sensory-seeking behavior and bangs against the backrest would benefit from this. Now, another thing to point out with this spring is that you can lock it out. As we look at the index for the backrest here, you're only going to get that full range at the backrest when the spring is unlocked. If I lock the spring, that will eliminate 10 degrees or so of the range, depending where I lock it. So if you need the full recline, you will want to make sure you lock it at the maximum recline. And then if you need the full forward, make sure that you lock it at that forward position. Now, we have the seat itself. Whether you are on the standard base or on the high-low base, the features of the seat are the same. Let's talk about sizing. One important consideration is the seat depth, because you need the knee to be able to bend comfortably with space behind the knee without dragging the child into a posterior tilt type sitting position. So this adjustment here allows you to lengthen or shorten the seat. Seat width is another consideration to assure that good seating alignment. That is done with the hip guides. This little white button here allows you to have some adjustability in and out. And then there's also some up and down as needed for a particular child. So when we remove an armrest to make a lateral transfer more easy, we can just remove the armrest and the hip guide with it. Then there is also the footrest height. Very important to assure weight bearing through the feet while sitting. That is the little white button on the side here. So you can lengthen and shorten the footrest depth. There is also an angle adjust, which might vary depending on the tilt and space position of the chair or the anatomy of the child. So you always want to take time to make sure that the knee and ankle angles are enabling that full contact along the base of the foot. And this footrest does also accept the full weight of the child in case you would want to use that as a step up or a step down. It's also possible to swing it back underneath. And that's cool for encouraging a child to get their feet right on the floor. You could practice stand to sit to stand right out of the chair. Just make sure you have that seat forward enough and high enough for that option. You can then adjust the seat height and the angle and think about the use of the armrest by the child or maybe a table surface nearby so that they have that early success with that sit to stand skill. Rifton offers a footboard lift for all 3 sizes of the chair. If you can't quite get it high enough, this allows you to get some added height, and then you can still raise and lower the footboard till you get it in the right place. So then we also have the backrest height adjustment, and that is right here. That's this little white lever that allows us to raise and lower the back. Now, to fill that space in the case when it is in the highest position, we have the Backrest Fader Pad to assure that contact for a pelvis neutral position, assuring surface pressure along the PSIS. So for functional sitting, the surface contact along the posterior thigh and then the base of the feet and then against the back will all serve as weight-bearing base of support. That is why these dimensions are so important for sizing. We also really want to get that child all the way back in the chair. For functional sitting, the pelvis and hip position is pretty essential, as this will be your base of support. We start with the pelvis and hips, as we often find that the best plan is to get that very well secured and stabilized, and then we can get away with fewer supports at the upper trunk and at the feet. So that really is your foundation for sitting. So every chair is going to come with a seat belt, and it has a little attachment point. This is the only time a tool is required with the activity chair. Use either a pen or key to just put that in and lock and unlock that. Now you have 2 options for placement. So with the seat belt farther forward, you may actually enable a little more active anterior tilt of the pelvis for forward lean of the trunk versus having it secured right back on the pelvis. This option may also matter if you're using the butterfly harness and you want some flexibility in terms of where you attach each accessory. Then we have the pelvic harness. This would be in place of the seat belt. It attaches at the back of the seat, just like the seat belt, the same mechanism with that flatter part toward the back. And it can also be in either slot. This actually comes around the inside, the proximal thigh, and buckles here. So what that is going to do is contain the pelvis at the back of the seat, especially for these children with high extensor tone who tend to thrust forward in the seat. This has really been a popular solution with our therapists. So we already mentioned the hip guides and the Backrest Fader Pad, which can be important for positioning the pelvis. And there is also a thigh strap. This would be ordered in advance from the factory. And this little rectangle fits into a little T-shaped hole under the pad. And it secures the thighs and would then move forward and back with this seat. This is a lumbar seat and support kit, which is optional for sliding under the backrest and also under the seat. This provides a bit of lumbar positioning and can assure support at the lumbar area to cue an anterior tilt at the pelvis. And the seat pad you would use with the waterfall edge at the front under the knees. We suggest probably a 2/3 coverage so that you're capturing the ischial tuberosities behind this ledge, depending on your seat depth. So as a child is progressing to independent sitting, you can see how removing some of those external supports and rather using this might be just enough to cue their postural control as they are working on developing their own sitting. There is a little bit of Velcro that can secure right onto the backrest under the pad, and then you can even carve the pieces to tweak it to accommodate pelvic asymmetries or scoliosis. Moving down to the lower extremities, we have an abductor. The abductor is helping the leg separation, and it is contoured so that you're sitting down over it or you're transferring up over it, and it just secures right here in the front. There is some depth adjust. The large abductor can fit on any sizes of chair, so that could be very ideal when you want that abduction for your postural management. Then we also have a leg prompt. This leg prompt attaches into the same point of attachment as that abductor. So it has these white buttons again that give you some positioning in and out. There's also some positioning forward and back. This would secure just below the knee and basically helps to contain the legs should they tend to have extraneous movements, kicking out and so on. These are the adductors. They are not as containing, they simply provide a boundary as needed. We also have a sandal. That secures to a base. And that secures onto the footrest. So it is a stack and latch system. There's also the option of including a wedge, either for dorsiflexion or plantar flexion, or you can use two in opposite directions to stack and provide a difference in height in the case of a leg length discrepancy. With the holes on the footboard, we can get a little bit of external rotation or abduction. Then there is the ankle prompt that just attaches at the back here, again providing a bit of a boundary. You can lengthen or shorten that strap to help hold the feet in place. So this is an important point. The feet are again an essential part of the child's base of support in sitting. So you can see how, particularly if you're incorporating anterior tilt or some forward leaning, when the feet are solidly in position with weight bearing down through, this can help keep the hips back in the chair. And the child can also control their own extensor tone. The MOVE program and also Karen Kangas definitely emphasize this important point for postural control. We have to realize that children who have their feet in AFOs for so much of their life are not used to having that awareness of the ground reaction forces. So it is our job to properly position those angles at the knee and ankle for getting that total contact of the feet. So then we'll move right on up and look at our trunk support options. We have two styles of butterfly harness. These are designed with the lower clip the same as the seatbelt or pelvic harness. Just be sure that when you are using a butterfly harness, that you always use either a seatbelt or pelvic harness along with it. This is not considered sufficient for hip positioning. We don't want the child sliding out from underneath this. But we do have a very deep contour here, to help prevent choking, as well as the fact that this is incompatible with the buckle at the top, so you can't put it on wrong. This is definitely for the seat attachment, and this is definitely for the shoulder attachment. Now this one is the slim cut. This is nice for if you're putting a child into the medium chair who is almost too small for it, but you want to offer them room to grow. The smaller of the two styles for a smaller child. It can also accommodate a G-tube or a baclofen pump that may be below the ribs. For older adolescent girls or adult women in the large chair, this may be more comfortable. There's also the wide chest strap. This just secures straight across the backrest, and there is an up and down adjustment as well. So a higher position where you've secured those straps more tightly, then you're giving the child a lot more support. As they are gaining trunk support, you can loosen that and lower that, and that will challenge their sitting ability, working to maintain their own center of gravity over their base of support. And that might even be situation specific, where in a certain activity you provide either less or more control depending on what they are doing and the amount of attention they can give to their own postural control and postural positioning during that task. Therapeutically, we may want to perhaps limit some of that trunk movement a bit when they are reaching, for example. Those same metal tracks at the back also accommodate the trunk laterals. So should you need some anterior support along with the lateral, that is where this flexible strap comes in. And that can be placed so that it is around the outside of the lateral, or it can be around the inside, closer to the trunk. And you have the same height adjust in terms of those lateral positions. You may want to think about the location of those lateral supports. For example, for a child with scoliosis, you may want to place that at the convexity of the curve. These are independently height adjustable. There's also some rotation and some in and out. Now, another way to promote trunk control is with arm positioning. The arm rests are height adjustable and angle adjustable, and the tray slides right onto them. Once you have the tray on, there's a little white lever on the side of the armrest, so we can lift that and swing the tray up. And the idea here is that the child can place their arms on the tray as a way to gain head and trunk control. So the child's own arms become another support surface. The depth of the tray is adjustable with a one-handed latch. Of course, if there is a table or desk, we can flip these armrests down out of the way and bring the child right up to another surface rather than use the tray. And that's much more inclusive. So if we think about that concept of forward tilt of the seat and weight bearing through the feet while in that position, then the backrest can also provide support or not, depending on that backrest angle and the level of the child's own sitting ability as they are using their arms for support. Rifton does offer the anchors, and that's a whole variety of supports that can secure right onto the table. So similar to that, along the same lines, is the concept of using this bar with forearm prompts. So this attaches into the same slot as the armrest, and the forearm prompt has height adjust and can be moved into position as needed with the clamp or the position of the post, giving you some positioning options. It's the same arm prompt we're familiar with from the pacer, and it gives you some options for positioning the arms. For example, position both arms as the child is working on head control. Perhaps they're watching a movie. Or for a child who has a lot of spasticity in one arm, you can control that and get better use of the arm that is free, perhaps with a communication device. We can also attach the arm platform from Rifton to the same bar, so that's another great option for arm support. Another option is to completely remove any arm support, and this gives us seating that is similar to a regular classroom chair, and that allows the child to practice and then eventually gain ability to sit in a chair with no side supports. So really, we are talking about sitting as an activity. So whether you're using your arms to reach or whether you are in a sitting position observing, your positioning will be a little bit different in terms of the amount of support that is provided for the child. So we may have times when we're positioning for practice of head and upper trunk control that's a little more intensive than at other times. So we may be supporting at the trunk to encourage arm movement, or we may be placing the arms as the base of support to work on that upper trunk and head control. So we're always thinking about how do we encourage that postural control and how do we enable the activity that they're doing, but then build on their own intrinsic ability over time as well. And that's where our creativity in the field comes in with added supports, although of course Rifton cannot be responsible for modifications in the field, but that allows you to offer those practice opportunities. That external support can be important to enable the activity to happen in the first place, but then we want to reduce that support, not only substitute. We want to learn, give them that chance to learn as they gain their own skills, and it may be activity specific in terms of the amount of support you're providing at that cafeteria table could be different than the support you're providing during circle time. So really it's starting with that head control or that upper trunk control. And we can really see gains if we're providing those practice opportunities on a regular basis. So speaking of head control, let's look at the options for the headrest. The winged headrest is the most supportive. It is height adjustable, and you do also have these two knobs that allow for angle adjustment, height and angle adjustment. Then there's also these two knobs that allow you to work with positioning of those wings on either side, again, depending on the child's needs. We also have a contoured and a flat headrest. These are also height adjustable as well as depth and angle adjustable. Now, if a child needs even more support than these options, we do have an attachment that allows the activity chair to be compatible with the Wittmeyer headrest, if you are familiar with that. It has much more occipital support. So this little attachment right here allows you to simply remove those bolts and place this mounting in place, which then serves to enable you to mount the Wittmeyer headrest. Now, when we position the pelvis really well and work with those lower extremity and trunk support ideas as we discussed, as well as that backrest angle, which in some cases, it might help to open that up a little bit beyond 90, and then to adjust the seat tilt with the tilt-in space. We want to do what we can for that line of gravity to help with postural positioning, especially that head position. We want that head in a good position for vision and for access to the environment, as well as allowing the child to work on their own head control, rather than simply reclining them or using a posterior tilt for that head. So this functional sitting position is a work in progress, helping our children improve their ability for active sitting for participation. And that completes this webinar on use of the Rifton Activity Chair for functional sitting. Thank you for your attention and participation. Have a great day.